la famille.
I'm speaking about Project A a little bit, so I have to correct some things, just small things, and just giving you like a brief overview of how we do product and how, in my opinion, you should build a product team. So first of all, very short about me. I've been doing web development for quite some time. Since I was 15, basically on and off, then studied business engineering, came to Berlin with an e-commerce company, and then heard about Project A and joined them February 2014 as a new business analyst, which is basically the person or the position that actually looks at all the deal flow and looks at all the companies that come in for and apply or want to work with Project A. Did that for a year, learned a lot, saw a lot, learned a lot about the business side of things, about pitching, got to know a lot of founders, a lot of VCs, that kind of stuff. And then from there basically transitioned into a more operational role as a product manager. Some of the companies I was involved with on the right side, these are some of our portfolio companies, but I don't want to go into too much into detail. Project A, you could say we are a company builder / incubator, I think. No incubator. Anyway, we call ourselves operational VC. This actually took almost 5 years to develop, to actually find out like what are we doing. It's similar to Rocket, definitely. I mean, the roots of Project A lie within Rocket. Yeah, nobody can deny that. What we do right now is basically 3 different models. So we do co-founding, so we don't really do company building anymore. We don't create ventures from within Project A, but we actually look for teams in a very early stage and try to help them. We do acceleration. This means they're already established teams. They already know what they do, but we can still support them. And we do some kind of strategic investments. So that means, for example, we work together with private equity funds of like really old established companies and try to help them digitalize their business. Yeah, that's not important. So bottom line, we basically offer 2 things: investment, money, and operational support. So most VCs will actually offer a startup money and say, okay, it's smart money, we use our network, we make intros, we support you, we're like a sparring partner, stuff like that. That's like the typical VC. What Project A does, and what is, I think, still pretty unique in Europe, and I think worldwide, I think Andreessen Horowitz is doing something similar, is actually operational support. So we have pretty much roughly 100 people from different departments that have been with us for quite some while and then have a lot of experience in the different fields. From online marketing, product, IT, so engineering, different tech teams, business development, HR, so recruiting, sales, and venture development, or like business development. And those are all teams within Project A that actually help our ventures to succeed. So how does it look like? We invest into a company. We don't invest because we don't just invest money, but we only invest into a company when we can add value. Most of the times this is at least online marketing, product, IT, or even recruiting. So then we go in there and we try to enable the company. So we see what they have. If they have a product team already, we try to coach them, we try to improve them, we try to support them. If they don't have a product team, for example, if they have no IT whatsoever, we try to go in there, build up the structures, build up the team, hire people, train them, and then fade out again. So the idea is to go in, build up everything as fast as possible and fade out again, to actually empower the company. This leads to our, if you look at the product team that does it at Project A, this leads to a focus of we're launching and we're relaunching. Most of the times if we start a new company, so there's only maybe a small founder team, we actually try them launching. We actually help them launching their product. So I was working on Juno Medical, for example, that's one of our portfolio companies. Earlier this year, the founder came in beginning of March. Beginning of March, we launched 6 weeks later. So we went in there with like a huge dev team, built up everything, and basically launched 6 weeks later. But then it started to fade out again. Yeah, some of our people basically stayed in the company because they liked the culture, they liked the team. They also hired new people. We tried to do like a smooth transition. We helped them basically recruit all those people and train them, and then faded out again, and then moved basically to the next project. So yeah, if you look at our operational mode, it's somehow a little bit compared to, for example, a consultancy. So it's very project-based, but you always work with the same team. So you know the people you work with, you probably work with them on a different project already. You know how they react, you know what they need, you know how they, like, you know their personality. Building a great product team. Yeah, when Hugo asked me like, hey, can you speak about do's and don'ts in building a great product team? I was like, good question. I think the most important thing about the team are the people in the team and how they interact with each other. This is what makes the team actually. I'm trying to speak about this a little bit. I don't know if I'm meeting the expectations or like the level of everyone in this room. I'm not going too much into detail in regards to content or IT infrastructure or tech stacks or anything. So if you have any questions, just interrupt me, or we can discuss later. Yeah, so as I said, who's working in the product team and how are you actually working together in this team? So who's working in the team? This is how a usual product team, I would say, looks at Project A. The first point you can argue about if the management or like the founders are actually part of the product team. Normally I would say no, but in most of the cases they are, because they just get involved. They just are there and just want to do make decisions and decide stuff. So they definitely are an implicit part of the product team. Design user experience stands for itself. A CTO, which is let's call him like a IT or like a IT infrastructure or an IT architect. Developers itself that actually do the code. QA persons or quality assurance people that actually test your software, that actually guarantee a high standard that your software is working, that your product is working smoothly on different devices, actually also demanded from the developers. And last but not least, the PM. In that case, for example, me or one of my colleagues that actually try to hold everything together, try to manage the team, try to prioritize, try to communicate, and actually are responsible that the team is working. Management. Yeah, I think the best strategy for the management is the hands-off strategy. So they just don't do anything, you're laughing. Yeah, so I had, like in my history at Project A, I had very different, like I work with very different management teams. So some of them are really, you love them as a product manager because they just say like, okay, you do your job, you know what you do, you can handle your product team, I support you wherever I can. This is, in my opinion, the best strategy. There are also different kinds where they actually do a lot of micromanagement. They want to be involved in every decision process. They always question things that they don't understand, stuff like that. So it's good, in my opinion, if they challenge decisions and ideas. So if they ask, okay, why is that? And actually challenge the product team. Give constructive feedback and input. Also, this is not given always. Be data-driven. Data-driven as opposed to not being opinion-driven. So don't say like, hey, I think this should be green because I like green, but actually try to understand the data behind it. Like, why could green actually be better? Oh, sorry. And yeah, overall enable the team. Don't try to control the team, don't try to micromanage the team, but enable the team. Try, like enable, give them an atmosphere that the team can work. Design UX, very important, understand the user. So I've worked with a couple of designers that actually are really, really good designers and really good UX people. But they design stuff they really want to design because it's fancy shit. So, and this is nice because it looks really cool, but it could happen that it does not reflect what the user actually needs or like what the product should actually look like. It's very good if they work in a structured way. So a lot of designers are like really creative, which is very good. I mean, that's their job. but it can also lead to tension between, for example, developers and a designer. If you look at the connection between a front-end developer and a designer, it is good if the designer actually has a structured working process and can actually break things down and understand how the code works and understand how the technology behind it works, and not just says like, hey, here are the designs, make it happen. Yeah, and also understand the business model. So most of the time, same thing, designer designs something because it's nice, it looks good, but like the layer beyond actually how the business works, how the business model itself works is really, really important to understand. CTO, tech lead. I mentioned that before. So how we normally work is you have the PM, and the PM basically acts as an interface to all the external stakeholders. The CTO is basically the PM's best buddy because he knows, he's like most closely on a professional level to the developers. So he knows the developers, he knows their skills. As a PM, you most of the time, depends on your background, you don't necessarily know exactly what your developers are doing because you might not have the most technical background. And they're also responsible for the whole IT infrastructure, for infrastructure decisions, that kind of stuff. Effort estimation, so it's always good to have a good connection as a PM to a CTO or like to a tech lead, and to do rough estimates. Say like, okay, this feature, what do you think? Is it rather like a week or is it rather 4 weeks? Just to get an estimate, and then you can actually break it down and create tickets and speak with the developer about it. Also good if you respect, I mean, this is not a complete list, but this is just something I experienced in the past. Respect non-technical colleagues. So there will always be non-technical colleagues in your team. So people that do not understand whatsoever what the people are doing, and are like always like, oh, how does this website appear here? So really keep this in mind. Try to understand the context. This also goes a little bit into, don't just take a ticket and develop everything that's exactly in the ticket, but also think, apply common sense and think, okay, what is the context? Why are things like they are? Why are things the way they are? And also challenge decisions. This happens a lot in my daily job. So developers challenge me a lot, which is really good. It can be also very annoying when you just say like, okay, this is perfect specification, and then like 5 minutes later they're standing next to you. They're like, okay, what about this case and this case and this case and this edge case? And you're like, huh, good point. Yeah, but it actually helps the team going forward. QA. So how we work with QA is actually before we deploy anything, it's being QA'd by like a neutral person, I would say. So a person that actually reviews the whole thing with a clear mind. I was not involved in the decision process, not involved in the whole development process, but actually knows how the business works and also knows how the product should behave. So here it's very good to be very detail oriented. So if something is a little bit off, you can say like, okay, this is a little bit off, I don't really care. It doesn't have to be pixel perfect, but if like, then it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and like the threshold, the delta gets bigger. Demand high quality from your developers. So yeah, we sometimes have the problem that QA persons get, or like developers get a bit annoyed from QA persons because like, if it's just a little bit, something changes a little bit, they just say like, oh, QA fail, this is bad, this is wrong. And then the developer's like, yeah, but like everything else is working, it's just the front end that's a bit off. But this is actually good, and this actually ensures high quality. Focus on the edge cases, so really try to think about edge cases. This is how you find bugs, but also be pragmatic. So if you say like, okay, this is like a low priority bug, we just push it through, so it doesn't really stop the whole development process. And last but not least, PM. Most important thing, know your team. So actually know who's on your team, how they work, how they think, what they value, what they don't value, when they want to, like, if they're more like morning person, if they're more like if they're more productive at night, if they're more communicative in the morning or at night. Be there for your team, be responsive. So I think the worst thing you can do as a PM is just say like, hey, here are the specs, I'm leaving, I'm back tomorrow. So then they're like completely lost sometimes. Be pragmatic, but also demanding. So, as I say, also demand high quality and demand them to actually do their job. So you're not the babysitter. A PM is not the babysitter of a developer, but also try to be pragmatic. If you say, hey, this like change takes us costs us another 2 days, just say like, okay, let's just skip it. We do this later. We don't do this at all. Like just descope. Yeah, and you're basically combining business, UX, and IT. So there's like a very famous diagram from Mind the Product, which shows like business, IT, and UX, and the product manager is basically in the middle. So you're basically the one combining all the loose ends, and you're also the person that actually has to understand all the different ends and what's happening in the different working streams. In this position, you're also like communicating both internally to the team and try to make sure, or like you're in charge to make sure that also like different team members are talking to each other, which especially for some more introverted team members, this is sometimes not the easiest part. But also externally, I mean externally towards externally of the product team to stakeholders, to the founding team, to investors, to the operations team, to marketing, that kind of stuff. So actually make sure they know what's going on. They don't have the feeling, oh, the product team is like working and we don't see anything. So they actually, what are they doing the whole day? But actually try to update them, try to show progress. Yeah, and last but not least, protect your devs. So protect them from actually a founder coming in and say like, oh, I saw this on the webpage, why is it like this, change it now. But actually try to shield them from other stakeholders, protect them, and actually look that they're happy. So, and I mean it, so really try to get to know each other, and then ask them, okay, what makes you happy? What is your perfect working style? Like, should I leave you alone in the morning? Should I really try to break it down a very personal level? This helped me a lot in the past. This was like who's in the product team. This is basically how our product teams tend to look like. Now quickly about how this team works together, and a little bit like I want to touch a little bit the do's and don'ts. Plan. If you cannot describe what you're doing, you don't know what you're doing. So really try to document your plans, what you're trying to do, and also your decisions, and really make it open, make it available to your team so they actually know, okay, why are we doing that and what are we doing? Create a product vision and product roadmap. So product vision is like a more strategic thing. We want to become the leading X whatever product. Product roadmap is more for the first or for the next 1 to 3 months. So what features are we actually building and what's the timeline? And depending on the phase, decide if you switch to cowboy mode or actually like a very structured process. So I spoke about Juno Medical. This was more cowboy mode. It was like, okay, we're starting today. Tomorrow we have like a 12 dev development team, and we have to launch in 6 weeks. So there's no, okay, we think about a plan and we provide you the plan on Monday, but there's like, okay, what should they do tomorrow? So it's kind of a little bit more agile, more on the spot. Yeah, but also try to be one step ahead of your team and try to act and don't react. Don't react to people coming to you like, what should I do, or why is that the way it is? But really try to be like always one step ahead. Yeah, don't react. Don't take everything into your scope. So especially if you have a tight deadline, which we normally have, and I think Ed will also speak about that. Really think about what you're taking into your scope. Like, is this really necessary, or is this just because the founder wants it, or like one of the stakeholder wants it. I made really bad experience in not having a clear roadmap, because you have it in your head as a product manager, you're like, oh yeah, of course it's clear, like the next 3 weeks we'll work on this and this. Doesn't mean your team has it. They're different personality types. They might not always pay attention when you say something. So really make it clear, print it out, put it to the wall and say like, hey, this is what we're actually working on, right? And really try to make that clear and have it on a visible spot. Learn how to understand existing data. Who of you has ever used Google Analytics? Okay, Cool. Who is using it on a daily basis? Okay, less. So I made the experience that a lot of people know analytics and they know like the first 5 dashboards, but they actually don't know how to get like meaningful data out of it. They're like, oh, I'm checking analytics, like, oh, site usage, nice, yeah, looks good, going up, going down. So it's really, I experienced that, and it's not a general thing, but really, I mean, this data is available. Analytics is really easy to implement, and I see it so often that people have no clue how to use it. They always look in the data at the graphs and say like, yep, going up, cool, but what does it mean? I don't know. So really try to understand what it means. Go there with a question. Don't go there and just like, I'm checking analytics, but say like, okay, how did this campaign influence our bounce rate or influence our customer acquisition cost, that kind of stuff. Leave your opinion at home. I mentioned that before, so don't, when you discuss, for example, about features, how something should be, don't say like, oh, I like it more this way, but really try to be hypothesis driven. Be open, be curious. So this means don't stay in your given thinking method or like thinking corridor, but always try to think outside of the box. And if you if you look at your data, try to be open and curious about things that you might actually find out which you didn't expect. Yeah, assume, but don't only assume. So assume things. Actually look at the data and say like, okay, why is that going up? Okay, there could be a reason. Build up a hypothesis, but then not only build up a hypothesis, but also try to measure it and try to verify or validate it. And always document decisions and assumptions. Like I've experienced so many times that people just say like, oh yeah, we think if we implement this feature, we can raise the conversion rate by X%. And then it's sad, and then like 6 weeks later, they deploy it, and it just goes up by 2%. Everyone's like, hey, 2%, oh, awesome, successful feature. And before, if you would have written that down and said like, okay, it's only a successful feature if it goes up by X%, you would actually know, okay, it was not successful. So next time maybe you should do something else. And yeah, exactly, Dunning-Kruger effect. So you don't know what you don't know. This is very important, exactly, like also when you look at A/B testing or something, or like think about new features. You actually can't take everything into account. You can't take things into account that you don't know. So really try to make, especially if you're, for example, A/B testing or thinking about features, try to think outside of the box and try to make like really big changes and see how they perform. Because maybe you're like on a local optimum, but you're not on the global optimum, because you would have to make like a complete change, like doing something completely different to actually get to this other peak. Yeah, I said that already. Personal opinions, hippos. So highest person's paid opinion, I think. So like if your boss comes and says, hey, I went golfing with my buddy on the weekend, and he said, pop-up, like exit intent pop-ups are the news shit. You're like, yay. Try to block that. Be really aware to not misinterpret data if you don't have enough data. So really always check, is the data meaningful enough? Do we have like significance? Or is it just like I guess most of you guys have seen an A/B test where the A version performs better all the time, and at some point it makes like whoop, and it's like the other way around. Like after 2 weeks or something, when you actually get closer to significant data. So, and don't show this data to people that could actually then get the wrong idea out of it. So a lot of people don't know about this effect, don't know what significance is. So if they just see like, hey, A is better, that's actually really bad idea. So what we, for example, we do AAB tests or AABB tests. So you actually see the variance between the same versions. So you actually see, if you do an AAB test and A and B perform completely different, you know you don't have like significance, basically. Communicate often, transparently and openly. So I made a really good experience to communicate everything you know to your team. So be really transparent, actually make them feeling to be a part of your team. Also make the business goals, strategy, vision, and roadmap very, very clear. So as I said, most of the times, a lot of people, like the management and the PM, the product manager, they have it in their mind, and it's like, yeah, of course, it's clear. This is where we go. But parts of the team might not. Also demand transparency. So really demand this from your developers, like, hey, what are you doing? Like, what is the status on this? Or like, what are you working on? This kind of stuff. And also involve stakeholders to a certain extent. So as I said, try to communicate, for example, your achievings, your progress, but don't, for example, let them know about every problem which might make them panic. And sometimes, at least to your team, try to over-communicate. So repeat things. So because, as I said, some things might not get heard sometimes. Try to avoid politics. Selective information, so don't tell some parts of your team this and the other part this. So really try to be open, even if you sometimes get shit from your developers or from any other team members. Don't communicate wrong or no goals. And don't assume everyone is on the same page. So really make it clear, rather communicate too much than too little. And also something which I mentioned before, don't ignore different personality types. So you might have a developer that has like an outgoing, extroverted personality type that really likes to discuss and jump into discussions when you talk about IT infrastructure, but that's not necessarily the best option. Whereas you might have a developer that is like very introverted, but might have the better solution, but it's just not outgoing enough to actually tell you the solution in the discussion or like be part of the discussion. So really try to know your team and try to know when you actually have to talk to someone one-on-one to actually get his opinion or like get his feedback, and when not. Trust. This is, for me personally, one of the most important points to actually build up a trustworthy environment. So, as I said, the team is about the people and how you work together, and I think me and probably most of, or like all of you guys, spend most of your living time at work with this team. So really make sure you can trust each other. You have a level of trust, which is actually not that easy. Something that worked for me is actually show weakness. So actually, I mean, in a professional environment, everyone tries to be as perfect as possible and as professional as possible, and I know everything. But really say like, okay, sorry, I fucked up here. I'm just human. I'm sorry. Next time I'll do it better. Please, if you see anything where I did a mistake or something, let me know. I will change it. So really try to show that you can change and that you're human. Allow failure also in your team. So even if you fucked up something, or someone in your team fucked up something, it happens. It happens. Yesterday we deployed a new feature, and we were like announcing it in the Slack channel. It was like 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then it was just a blank white page, and we were like, huh. Stupid in this situation, but a mistake that this person would probably not, you learn from it and you don't do it the next time. Try to address issues immediately, directly and openly. So if you see something that goes wrong, really, am I over time? Okay, sorry, I'm almost done. Address it, show respect and empathy. So really try to feel with your teammates and also respect them. Don't embarrass other team members or do finger pointing or something. So if you work as a team, you actually work as a team. So even if there's a mistake made in the team, it's still try to like keep it in the team and don't do finger pointing. Yes, and I think this is the last one. Test often internally and externally. So really try to be user-centric and not what you actually want to build. Focus on the problem, not the solution. So don't deploy something or don't build something because you really like deploying that, because for you it's an awesome feature, but actually see if it solves the problem or not, and try to understand the customer's problem and the job your tool or your products actually to be done. Yeah, don't fall in love with the solution, or ask customers question like, hey, would you find this useful? And then they say, yes, of course. And they're like, okay, we build it. Yeah, be agile, celebrate change, embrace the suck. So if you're in a shitty project, really try to get your team behind you and say like, okay, I know this sucks, this is a shitty project, but it's over eventually and we can do it and we can still pull it off. Try to do quick proof of concepts, not like don't spend too much time developing actually huge software, and try to test it as soon as possible. Focus really on what you need to do. Say no to stuff, de-scope. Don't overwhelm your team members with too much information, too many requests, too many tickets. Don't clutter your backlog, and don't just become a project manager that creates tickets or like moves tickets, but actually be a product manager that knows, like decides what the team is building, and not just do the project managers for external stakeholders. Yeah, do regular retrospectives, open feedback in the team, so really try to establish this, that everyone can give everyone feedback and no one is punished. And don't ignore it, and don't ignore existing frustration. And last but not least, keep calm, don't panic. Always think before you do decisions and also consider the implications. And don't try to transfer the stress to your team actually, and decide without thinking. And the most important thing, have fun. So as I said, you spend most of your time with this team, you spend most of the team in this company doing this product. So the most important thing as well is actually having fun with the stuff you do. Ooh, yeah. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you. Really interesting presentation. I was wondering, how does your design iteration process look like? Like, what role do you play, and how do you go through it?
It depends, as most of the time. It really depends on the stage of the company. So if we start in a very early process, or like in a very early stage of the company, we're basically starting from scratch. So then we first try to understand the user or the use case. We try to actually get all the knowledge we have, and we work a lot with design sprints. So Google Ventures design sprints, which you might have heard. So that's most of the time when we are in an early stage. If currently I'm working on a project that's actually pretty mature and they already have like a corporate brand and corporate branding, there it's actually a lot harder to do something really different than like to break out of the existing brand process. But most of the time I'm working together with our UX designer. Most of the time he's in the lead, so I provide wireframes, or like we talk about the use cases, and then he creates like a high fidelity prototype in Sketch or InVision most of the time. The whole feedback, so also devs actually discuss the wireframes and also give feedback. And then from there we actually iterate and then put it into development.
Next question?
Yeah.
Thanks for the presentation, really interesting. I'd just like to ask you, when does the information start to be relevant? Especially in cases when you don't have almost no information, you are releasing. I know it depends case by case, but there's something some pattern or something that you rely on typically.
What kind of information do you mean?
You were saying stick to the information to make decisions, like make it meaningful. When does it start to be meaningful?
I can point you to my statistics lesson. Well, if you look at quantitative data, so not qualitative, but more like numbers, you really have to like, it has to be important that the whole data set is significant. This is basically like a Laplace experiment. So you can calculate it. So depending on the change you expect, the bigger change you expect, the less data points you need. But if you only expect, for example, like a 2% uplift in whatever KPI, you actually need a lot of data to prove it. So the smaller the change, the bigger the data actually has to be, or the data set.
All right. Oh, right.
One more?
Last question.
Hi, thank you for presentation. I was actually working on similar things at Rocket. So I would like to ask you, when you start a new project, what data are you looking at? Because of course there's no significance, right, in data.
Yeah, that's true. So you mean a new project without any product whatsoever? Yeah. It's difficult. So most of the time we have a close connection, as you guys as well, to Google. So Google can provide market data. So this is more general, not like if you look at product data, it's really hard to get. I mean, there are tools like SimilarWeb or something where you can actually look at competitors, but they're like, you can just apply a multiplier from 0 to 13 and you have the same basically. So they're not really accurate. So if you launch a new venture, it's actually really hard. So what we do in that cases is try to build an MVP that shows how the product will function, and then first collect qualitative feedback, so user research, try to find your target group, try to do user research basically, and try to first gather qualitative data before you actually have like quantitative, before you can get quantitative results.
So then basically the first design is made on the assumptions or
Yeah.
user designer? Or?
Yeah. So it's first, as I said, you get together, you try to understand what you're building, you try to understand the market from different data points, also like market research, that kind of stuff. And then actually try to build the first prototype and see if it works or not. So the first draft or like the first product is actually really, really hard to build if you don't know anything. Could be anything basically. Cool.
All right, thanks. Thank you
All
very
right,
much.
thank
again.
you.
And now we're gonna.
Que la famille.